Well, folks, this is going to be a ripper leading your best life today because I'm with Chris Winspear. Now, I met Chris at an art show a few weeks ago and he had such a fantastic story. I went, oh my God, we've got to do a podcast here. Chris, welcome aboard to Leading Your Best Life.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Mate, you're very organised, I know, because he's been in touch with me about 4 times in the lead up saying, Lee, I'm ready, I'm set. He sent me the paperwork. It's just beautiful, mate. So I love working with you guys from that African continent. You seem very organised, very organised. So, Chris, look, it's so much I want to talk about from your story. I'm looking here on your card, precious artist. What's that word in the middle? Precious
metal artist.
Precious metal artist. And I've gone to the website. I'm not going to go to the website just yet, but I'm going to show people the website shortly. But before we get to that, Chris, tell us a bit about your story. What has been your journey to get from where you've come from with that accent to where you are now? Give us the story.
All right. So back in 97, I was 14 years old. We immigrated to Sydney and South Africa has 11 official languages. I was failing one of the compulsory languages, which was Afrikaans, miserably. I love languages now, but at the time we weren't friends. And when I got to Sydney, I had to continue my high school, and I had to choose between doing jewelry, German, or Japanese. And I was like, this is not a great set of options. Languages, considering my background with growing up with Afrikaans, although I come from an English-speaking household, that wasn't going to be good. But jewelry, I thought, what a rubbish subject, but better than failing a language. I reluctantly took it and I fell in love with it. I really enjoyed it. So I continued that through my high school career. Then end of 2001, after graduating in Sydney, I went back to South Africa. I was like, great, that's it. It's awesome. I'm going to now just go and travel the world and do my thing. And I was going to go and do travel Europe by motorbike. That was sort of my goal at the time. And my parents had gotten divorced and my dad was living back in South Africa, managing the business and everything on that side. So, being a student and pretty much on the bones of my arse financially, I figured, right, my dad offered to get me back to South Africa on my way through to Europe. I was like, great, let's take advantage of this opportunity. Went back to SA and that's South Africa, not South Australia, as many people assume. And ended up getting caught up in life on that side. Ended up going to the University of Johannesburg, where I studied jewelry design and manufacture. And met my wife. We ended up working together after graduating, winning a really great award there. And I did my apprenticeship under some incredible goldsmiths. Then started our own business. And my wife and I started working together. Then we got married in 2014 in the January. And that October, now we've been working together since about 2008 at that point, we were having to go and Mel was going to go and run some errands. And I could probably count on one hand the number of times I've been to the office without her and our dog, little Rhino. He has a toy pom. He has always come to the office with us each day. And this day just happened to be one of those days. So Mel was busy getting ready, a bit mushy, but I took our iPad and I queued up our wedding song. And I had a note that said, play me. So I got to the office. By that point, Mel got the note and she phoned me up. So I was busy chatting to her as I went upstairs to unlock the office. And at that moment, I heard this guy running up a flight of stairs. And I thought it was one of the lads that worked for us. So I turned around to give him a nod, good morning. And at that moment, I was confronted with a guy racking a round up a chamber with a 9mm pointed at me as he came running down the passage. Wow. I thought I was about to get shot at that moment. I didn't want my wife to hear me getting shot. So I shouted, whoa, 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 to this chap as I hung up the phone. But Mel obviously heard the concern in my voice and immediately knew what was going on. Because unfortunately, in South Africa, there is a lot of crime. A lot of it is violence, unfortunately. And she called the armed response. And whilst all this was going on, the short of the long is we got into the workshop. I was assaulted, tied up, lying now in a pool of my own blood. His head wounds tend to be very bloody. And I overheard them whether or not it was the right time to kill me. So I talked them out of that, which was a bit of a thing. And after that whole ordeal, the decision was made to immigrate. And we had a really great team of guys working for us. So we had getting downscaling the business, shutting all that side down, and immigrating takes a bit of time. took us a year to get up. But within 6 months of my robbery, 5 colleagues were held up, 3 were shot, 2 been killed, and it was just like, yeah, we're making the right decision to move.
Wow.
And we came to WA. So just to literally just with what we fitted into a container, half of it with household belongings and the other half with some of the workshop equipment that I still need, with the intent to start up here. So we arrived, and not wanting to go and find jobs, we figured, look, we really wanted to do our own thing and carry on doing that, which we had done in South Africa. And part of what we do with the technology back end is we do the manufacturing of jewelry. So most jewelers, there's a large percentage of jewelers that don't do their own manufacturing, or they'll do partial fabrication. They would outsource the other steps to companies like ours. And so I just went literally door to door to all the jewelers and said, right, here we are, new in Perth, this is what we're doing. And our biggest competitors were on the East Coast, and still are on the East Coast. And that shipping of product back from the East Coast to here is about 2 to 3 days turnaround. And trust is a very big factor in the jewelry industry. But because, look, we were very new, so often people take a risk on us, but because it was a 2 to 3 day turnaround, it could mean the difference between the clients getting the deal over the line or not with their clients. So we were given the opportunity to give it a go and be able to at least chisel a foothold into that space. And that's where the service, the trade service business was able to at least get us on our feet. And where it comes into because there's a few little facets here. So what ended up happening then we had a particular client where we'd spent about a month working on a job. It was a great big job, and was so happy with it. Handed it over on the Wednesday. Client collects on the Thursday, and the Friday I phoned them up. I was like, well, was the client happy? What happened? And he said, well, they didn't complain. I was like, oh, mate, what a ridiculous benchmark for customer satisfaction. So I was absolutely gutted, and I went to go and sit with my wife Mel at Kings Park, and we were just sitting there like, what am I doing with my life? And we started Vinny and Charles, which is our online business. That's where that started. And with regards to the arts, the precious metal art side, which is the business card you have there, that was purely just from the requirement to be creative. Now, within the context of creating jewelry, you've got predefined variables, especially when you're doing custom bespoke pieces. Yes, you can do any design you want, but it's got to be functional. It's got to be practical. Right? You've got to have those variables in mind, which limit the scope of what you can do creatively. And when we had first moved into our rental units in Perth, we were inundated with spiders. So we had a pest control operator come around, fumigated the spiders. And when we came home that day, I was horrified to see just how many spiders there were. And I looked at all these poor little critters who had pulled out from where they were hiding, leaving their carcasses on the sidewalk as they made their way off to Valhalla. And I scooped these poor little guys up, and I thought, what could I do with this? And with the technology in our workshop, I was able to create one-time use molds, their carcasses, and turn that into gold or other precious metals for that matter. And that's really where that journey started. So about 10 years ago, and started leading into that. So we run them as 2 very separate brands. We've toned down the trade work side of things, and our focus is on Vinny and Charles, which is the sign you see behind me for the online business, doing the engagement rings, wedding bands, doing some corporate gifting in that space, bespoke corporate gifting, and then the Chris Winspear brand, which you have the business card there, which is purely just precious metal art. But it's all within the context of jewelry. So yeah, that's my story. I've been doing this for about 26 years now.
What a story. I mean, the very fact that you had the presence of mind to say, you wanted to hang up the phone so that if your future wife was going to hear you get killed, like you had that presence of mind, then you had the presence of mind to talk them out of shooting you, knowing that you didn't know at the time, but that within months, a whole range of your colleagues didn't get that good fortune or wasn't able to talk them. Just on that, what did you say to actually talk them out of shooting you?
So when I overheard the conversation, I was like, now keep in mind I'm lying on the floor in a pool of my own blood, with my hands tied behind my back with a pair of hiking boot laces, looking up at these guys and like, look guys, you've got armed robbery. No one's coming after you for armed robbery, but if it's murder, it might be something else, And what felt like an eternity, the guy eventually, the main guy, let's call him the main guy, he eventually said, "Okay, I won't kill you now." Thanks for that.
Wow. Wow. Mate,
That's
see,
that was it.
a lot of the work that we do in our coaching and our consulting and our sales training is around an area of study called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And what we say is, one, the questioner controls the conversation. And what you did there by getting him to, because I've heard of negotiators talk about this, or in a situation where you even say to a person, "What do you think you're doing?" They have to actually, the mind cannot not answer a question. So if I say to you right now, what's the best piece of jewelry you've ever designed, or who is your best customer? I know your mind goes to that place. NLP calls it a transderivational search. It's like searching a hard disk. So when you ask the guy, "What are you doing?" And you took him to and you gave him choice. You actually empowered him, as in, you can shoot me, but then there's going to be a real consequence. Versus if you don't, you've taken him to both, and then he's made a decision. Versus you could have been yelling at him, screaming at him, and of course that would have then elevated his state and got him angrier and put him into a state that would make him feel. So you cleverly, without knowing necessarily what you're doing, obviously you saved your own life by that piece of conversation. I mean, one of the things we talk about in leading your best life is life by design. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, of course, because there was this trigger point in your life to go, "I am making a change in my life." And in fact, you talked about two key trigger points there. One was the choice, German, Japanese, or jewelry, which is quite interesting. And it's almost alliteration there. You made a critical choice there, but then the critical choice of, "Okay, we're out of here." This trigger point. It's quite fascinating that where you've made these critical decisions along the way. And as you say, how terrible that colleagues this is all in the gold jewelry industry, was it?
Yeah. Precious metal and the precious stones. Yeah.
Mate, unbelievable. So, Vinny and Charles, what made you choose those names? How did that come about?
So my middle name is Charles, and my wife's maiden name was Vincent. And she actually, in Kings Park on that day, we were just messing around with ideas for names, and she came up with it. I was like,
Fantastic.
This business is nothing without her. She's an absolute rock. And I say, look, I have the easy part. I do all the manufacturing, and she does everything else.
Well, look, and you know what? The number of times we've seen fantastic husband and wife couples in business, right back to the Rockefellers. They talk about the Rockefellers would sit and they would, rather than go out with friends, they'd happily look at the books for that week or that month in terms of the accounts, which is pretty bizarre. And I was literally talking to my best man this morning as I was driving home, talking about great husband and wife couples in terms of interest in each other's in the business. Where we've seen in the past where the wife or the partner has little or no interest in the business, particularly in around money, the business can sail along. But when the wife, and in fact, the Chinese have a proverb, "Man who let wife be involved in business become wealthy man." That having the wife involved, the wife interested in the business, and again, obviously in a very harmonious way, where we say synergy, 1 + 1 becomes 3, or 2 + 2 becomes 5. That itself it's almost like if you could bottle that. I mean, I know you've taken dead spiders and turned them into gold. If you could take what you're doing in your relationship with your wife, and you could turn that into gold. That is a secret in itself. You know what I mean?
100%.
I've made a note. You've got the Midas touch. You've got the Midas touch, Chris. One thing
I just wanted to bring up that you'd mentioned, which you actually just made me think about it, was when you're saying I had the presence of mind at that moment to talk them out of it. And you got me thinking as to how that came to be. And I actually think I must actually attribute that to my brother growing up with him, because my brother was 3 years older than I was. And we had a middle cousin who so basically we were like 3 brothers growing up together. And being the youngest, I'd always get I don't want to swear on your podcast, but I would always get...
You'd get the shit bashed out of you.
That's right. Yeah. So I had to become very good at negotiating to not have that happen. And my brother in particular, he wouldn't respond well if you told him to do something. If you said,
right,
"Don't do that," or "What are you doing?" Like, I just knew that he didn't react well from doing that.
Yes.
So I always I developed a process of, let me rather give you options and try and highlight the option I want you to take in a better light. And thinking about it as we just had this conversation, I'd probably attribute that ability to think like that was actually due to having the shit kicked out of me as a kid and having to negotiate with my brother.
Yeah, well,
So,
no, cleverly done. Well, one, again, from an NLP point of view and a coaching point of view, we say Newton's third law, for every action there is an equal opposite reaction. So if you apply force to him and particularly back him into a corner, he's going to react. He's going to react back. And they say, and it's often the force is not always equal and opposite. It could actually be 3 times greater coming back at you. So by giving him choices, and then he feels he's in control, which is exactly what we do in sales, is we want clients to give people a choices. Like from a jewelry point of view, again, if you're either, and again, we do the same when we're coaching people in business to business sales, we say co-create the solution with the client so that the client is involved. We say involvement equals ownership equals commitment. You want the client committed, and again, whether it be to a piece of jewelry, if you can get them involved in the decision-making process, or we could do this or this or this, which would you prefer? Now they're involved in the process. They have an emotional and intellectual investment, and they're far more likely to be committed. And again, we base a lot of this on the work of a guy called Cialdini, Robert Cialdini. He's got a whole lot of work into influence and negotiate. Right. So it's just beautiful. One, it saved your life. What's your brother's name?
Richard.
Richard. Thank you, Richard. King Richard.
Absolutely.
Richard, King Richard. Beautifully done, mate. And of course, one of the other things we say in terms of sport, so over the years, my degree and then my master's degree was in physical education, because I was interested in what makes someone good at sport. And invariably, it's brothers or family, but particularly if you're talking a contact sport, a rugby or football or even cricket as well, with hours and hours of practice, brothers, 1 is good, 2 or 3 or 4 is even better, where you've got an ecosystem where you're literally learning to compete and learning to survive and learning to rebound. And in your case, particularly with the smallest or the youngest, how do I negotiate and talk or joke my way in and out of things to survive? So thank you, King Richard, and thank you your cousin as well. That ecosystem, literally, I think is clearly part of saving your life. Can I get to the point here? I'm going to share my screen because I'm so keen to show your website. Can you see the website there?
I can, yes.
Okay. Talk me through art, gold, NFT, gallery. So here, what is this here? What is this? Well, there it is. Hyperrealism. It all started with the spiders, huh?
Yeah, that's it. So from the robbery experience, it was really fundamental in helping me to reassess what's important in life. We always get so distracted in trying to cover this bill and get this done, and it's we're just juggling these elements that are thrown at us and these distractions. But at the end of the day, there's a set of underlying first principles that dictate the quality of our life. I truly believe this. And the point of the art that I create, and this particular piece is Adagio that you see on there. It's actually a cigar stand with a huntsman spider in it, and I've gone very organic in the structure around it. I'm not trying to promote smoking, but what I am trying to promote is the narrative of Adagio, which is slow time. You slow down time, refocus from your stressful life, disengage from your stress responses, focus on a neutral, something different, get absorbed visually in the features in that particular art piece, and then recenter yourself so you can take on your challenges from a composed perspective. So every single sculpture I've made, whether it's Adagio, phobia, motherhood, solitude, they're all anchored to certain points within the human experience that I believe are fundamental to try and live a better holistic life and spend time to just recenter oneself and empower the individual. That's really the narrative I'm pushing behind this project, behind my art.
Wow, mate. And the very fact you are very clear on the narrative, the story, which again, when we're talking to people in business, we say, on the one hand, a painting or a picture may just, clearly a lot of work goes into this, but let's say a sketch. I think there was a great story of Picasso. Someone comes up to me in a coffee shop and says, do me a sketch and I'll pay you for it, and takes, 30 seconds to do a sketch. And the person says, how much? And he says, $2,000 or whatever the number was. The person, what the hell? How do you justify that? It's 30 seconds. He goes, it's not 30 seconds. It's, 30 years to do this. But many times, I'll never forget, I was in one of the museums in Europe, and there was a charcoal sketch of some hands. And I went, well, that's just a sketch of hands. But then when someone told me, no, they are the hands of someone from the concentration camp, and that was because his brother had died. So there was a whole story behind it. And all of a sudden, that charcoal sketch of the hands took on a whole lot more meaning and had a whole lot more value. And I can see here with you, once you explain the story, the narrative, almost the value behind the piece takes on a whole other piece of value way beyond it's a piece of gold and there's a spider in there somewhere. You've now got layer upon layer upon layer, which when we're talking to people in business, we say we want you to train your people to be able to articulate, and you did it so beautifully there, to articulate the backstory, to articulate the value, to articulate the meaning, and all of a sudden there's a connection with the other human being you're communicating with at so many different levels. So,
business is art.
Sorry.
Sorry, not to interrupt you, but I really want to hammer home that point. Business is a form of art.
Yes.
If you really look at it, right? It's like art generally doesn't necessarily. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, it's just art," or "It's this business, and it's easy," whatever the case is. But art, like business, it's sustenance. You don't need it until you lose a family member, or a family dies, or a child dies. But if on the other side of that is like someone falls in love, and it's just we try and grasp for things as part of the human condition to help validate and help us through any situation. And the same within business, where I draw that parallel, is if you really invest and you're passionate about what it is that you do, you're trying to serve a higher purpose. At the end of the day, people need to get into something where they can grow, where they can serve other people, and they can make profit doing it. You have to earn profit. Profit is the first order of business. If you're not making profit, you're going out of business. But that's not the purpose of any human organization. The purpose is to make life more meaningful. When you take a hotel, for example, if you take all the people out of that hotel, you don't have a hotel any longer. You've got a building full of stuff. The hotel is the people, the employees. And there's a really great story. I don't know the gentleman's name, but he was a doorman at a hotel in Europe, and the Formula One teams would frequent his hotel. But this guy knew everyone by name. He knew their family members. He would greet them by name every time, inquiring about their family members, even though he'd never met their family members before. That guy was the only reason why people went to that establishment. I'm sure it was a very nice establishment, but there's plenty of nice establishments. It's the people that work there. You find the people who are born to do that thing and push into it. And the challenge with at least small businesses and entrepreneurs is, yes, you're able to be very fluid and dynamic, and you can move quite easily. The challenge is you have to wear a whole series of different hats. You've got to be the accountant, you've got to be the coffee person, you've got to do everything. But there's certain things that you just might be crap at doing, but you just have to do it until find the pain points of which is the most frustrating and painful thing that you're doing, which you're not actually very good at, until you get to a point that you can then, right, that's the first place I need you to push off. Get someone to help you with that, whether you outsource or you employ, whatever. Get someone to help you with that issue as soon as your funding gets there, depending on whether you're doing a bootstrap startup or whatever the case is. But constantly focus on quality. There's this whole big idea of, yes, just scale and be really, really big. But if you're chasing size, you can raise a lot of funding and become really, really big. But if your core product offering and the way that you're engaging and dealing with people is rubbish, it doesn't matter how big you build a company up, because it's not going to last very long. But if you
Yeah.
focus on those core principal values of adding true legitimate value to people, and you focus on that and maintaining that and growing that level of quality that you can provide, growth will come naturally. You will attract those types of people that want to be serviced by you, and you can service them, and creates that beautiful relationship.
Absolutely. And I can see the very way you're articulating that in terms of quality, coming back to your website here is just absolutely beautiful, mate. So
Thank you.
gold, and then gold, art. Let me just go. So creating for art's sake, a personal reach which invites experimentation and boundless creativity, place of play, discovery. So just beautiful. I mean, and the fact that you, as you say, you stumbled into this by avoiding German and Japanese, and now here you are, as you say, creating incredible quality pieces. What are these things here?
So that's actually a little background shot of my crucibles in the workshop. All the different metal types have different crucibles, so you don't contaminate all the different metal types.
What's
So
a
we've got
crucible? What's a crucible?
a crucible, which is actually very is a good metaphor for life, really. But a crucible is where you melt all your metals down. So, for
Yes.
example, that blue handle one on the end there, that's my 18-karat white gold alloy or 18-karat white gold crucible. In the case of 18-karat, 75% is gold, 25% is alloy. Now, it's very easy to manipulate the color of gold. Everything starts off with 24-karat gold, and it's for the sake of the example, it says 100% gold. If you're really going to get granular, technically it never is. It's 99.9999 or whatever the case is, but we call it 100% gold. You would then add 25% alloy. So you'd mix up various metals to get the result you're looking for. So we use high platinum and palladium content alloys for our white golds because I love the natural luster of it. There's a good level of hardness to it. And that's what I would melt up in there. Now, one thing to recognize with jewelry is I'm a foodie. There are thousands of recipes of cake. Some cakes are amazing. Some cakes are absolutely crap, and there's everything in between. Now, that is a great metaphor for jewelry because you can use different alloys. So, for example, in white gold, the alternative to your platinum group metals are things such as nickel, which give you a very good natural hardness, but the benefit is very inexpensive, but it is mildly toxic. So you ultimately end up poisoning your clients. Now, I'm not knocking any mass production facility, but let's say, for example, there's a factory that is going to produce 1 million units of design X. If they can save themselves $1 on every unit, that's $1 million they've saved themselves, right? I'm not in that type of business. I'm into creating beautiful, bespoke, unique pieces of art. And that is really where my main drive is. I want to create pieces that will, one day I will be long dead and buried, and someone will say, this was my great grandmother's piece of art, whether it's jewelry, sculpture. That means the world to me. It doesn't matter that I've been forgotten about, but there is one of the only things that really lasts generations and has that emotional connection to the individual and has that story behind it, which is so beautiful. And it's just it's really rewarding. But yeah.
Beautiful, mate. So I'm learning about jewelry here. So here you're polishing up, or what are you doing?
There I'm working with that's actually a Scotch mop on the end of a rotary handpiece. So that's actually removing some oxidation, the surface of a particular piece. You see, I've got some earmuffs on there. There's always metal that is lost during the cleaning process. And that little pipe, you can see there's connected to a vacuum with a special HEPA filters in there to recover whatever metal is lost, because it goes through the air, so it's always around.
You don't want to be breathing it in. Wow.
No.
Wow. And here's one of the spiders.
That's an Australian black spider. That particular one.
And so where have you sold these? Like, where do you exhibit these? Is it online or in store? How do people get hold of these things?
We have I have a digital brochure that I do submit to people, and I've got Brooke Ann, incredible. I've actually really got to acknowledge Brooke-Ann. She's been an incredible help with everything. She's my agent for the Chris Winslow brand. And she actually was instrumental in getting me into Wausau, which is where we met. She's got a gallery in Midlands, and I was exhibiting it. I've got a space there where I've got pieces on exhibition. And these pieces are being primarily targeted to Europe. There's quite a fair amount of precious metals that are used in these pieces. So these are targeting individuals whom they already have everything. All right. So
Yeah.
that what I'm trying to do, getting back to the fundamental purpose of the art, is I think the more successful people get, the more distractions there are. I'm talking financial success, right? So
Yes,
there's many
yes, of
forms
course.
success, but
Yep.
finance is always the easiest one to go for. And I think the struggle is to stay focused on your purpose, on your mission. What is it that you've been trying to achieve? And this, although there's very human first principle narratives behind each sculpture, the overarching premise would be to, what are you doing with your time? How are you spending your time? That is the only unrenewable resource we have. Money will come and go. You know, things always change. With correct management, we can replant rainforests. But we can never get back more time. What do you choose to do with your time? And getting sucked into these distractions, even for anyone, social media, whatever the case is, finding that purpose, getting reminded, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I see, I've got a visual reminder over here on my desk of, right, this is my purpose, get back to what I'm doing, get back to being focused. And that's really what I'm trying to achieve with this. And I am targeting the higher net wealth individuals because they are in such a unique position to actively inject positive change in the world. I believe that the vast majority of people are good people. Right?
Yeah.
I genuinely believe this. And those people who are high net wealth individuals, they've won at the money game. Now, whether you need, whether it's $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 a month living expenses, whatever, it's irrelevant. If those people have that covered, what do you do with the rest of your money? So if I said to you, Lee, here's an extra $1,000 a month, do something with it. You can't invest it. You have to do something with it, right? Because all your other needs are met. Then I said, okay, cool. What does another $5,000 a month look like? Now, Lee, here's $50,000 a month. What would you do with that? Or even 100,000. When you start to think from that mindset, then it really starts to open up, and you can then start to instill positive change. So many people end up relying on the government, say, oh, the government, it's a government problem. No, governments are implementers. They are not innovators. They're not inventors. They will find someone who invented a great system called a traffic light, and then they say, okay, this is actually really good for managing congestion in the streets. Let's get that implemented. They're really good at implementing. They're not great inventors. So if you're able to find those individuals who have been fortunate enough to win at the money game, and they've created a little bit of space around themselves, as opposed to go and have your fun, go and party, do whatever you need to do, get that out of your system. But then once that's done, what are you doing? What legacy are you leaving? And that's what this is really, what I'm trying to achieve with this, is be that beacon, that reminder for people to get back to your purpose, focus on your why. Viktor Frankl actually speaks very, very poetically on that in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He was an Auschwitz survivor.
Yes.
And he was a psychologist. Incredible book. And so you can basically, provided you have a why, you can make your way through life, oblivious of your hardships. And everyone has a hard knock. There's many things outside of our circle of influence that we are just subject to having to endure. But then what is within my circle of competence? What can I control? And then control that. Start from there. And if you just happen to have finances behind you, you're in a far stronger position. You'll be a hell of a lot more successful if you had several $1 million behind you and went on a campaign to save the rainforest, as opposed to having a placard outside an embassy saying, save the rainforest. I'm not knocking those individuals for their drive and their purpose and ambition. But what I am saying is those people who are in a position to have surplus capital behind them that they are willing to inject into doing good in the world, focus on that. Focus on what ultimately will give you peace of mind and a sense of contribution to the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to come back because it sounds like you've done some good reading over the years. I'm just going to go to some of these other things that I noticed on the site. Tell me about the NFTs. I've heard of them. Donald Trump's been using NFTs. I'm sure I've heard of people paying. As you say, it's future-proofing, integrating new technologies. Tell me how NFTs integrate with your business.
So what we're doing is starting out establishing the foundation of the artwork to real world credibility is what I'm creating with the artwork in the business. And the intent is moving forward after we've got a good base established for the brand, the pieces will no longer be sold. The pieces, there will be high resolution images taken of each sculpture. Will be several high resolution images. Then each image will be uploaded onto a blockchain and those NFTs will be sold off. Then those items will then be part of a collection. So we've got several art galleries. I've got one over in Melbourne, been chatting to one over in Amsterdam, another one in Chicago, where we'll then be every 6 months, the collection of pieces will then go on display. So if you imagine in your mind's eye, you walking into a beautifully curated space surrounded by gold sculptures. Now, the largest single body of gold sculpture, should I say, that's ever been presented to the world, I believe it was Tutankhamun's tomb, which I think was about 120 kilos of gold. And there's just such a mindset of, well, gold nowadays is either in computers and electronics or as jewelry. But throughout human history, there's been so many different applications of what jewelry, gold and precious metals used to be used for, which just have evaporated the face of the earth. We don't see those practices being done. Even the last great example of this would have been Peter Carl Fabergé's Fabergé eggs, which some incredible works. If anyone has an opportunity to ever see those, I highly recommend it. And so with all that in mind, the intent would be that these pieces would then go to different galleries and be exhibited, and using that marketing, that awareness to add value to the NFT holders.
Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. And I know, look, the detail on the spider, I mean, you made a mold, I gather you're saying, because the detail of these little lines, I gather it's like the hair
The
of
hairs,
the spider.
yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you. It's the general process with each spider, specifically the spider, there's a one-time use mold. You cannot create a standard mold where you'd be doing reproductions from it.
Right.
A one-time use mold is used per spider, and then the carcass is burnt out through a furnace, and molten metal is forced into that cavity. Now, there's, according to a particular paper I read, they estimate there's 360 fail points throughout that process to actually get a successful output. And in the case of spiders, you've actually got several variables going on there. You've got, yes, they're all small because, the size of the spider, but if you actually really look at what's happening in terms of proportion, you've got very, very fine legs compared to the size of the body and the abdomen. You're basically having to accommodate two completely different requirements to get a successful output within a single unit. And just an awful lot of effing around and finding out, I was able to identify a process that works, because on your surface level within this particular technique, I use different techniques, but in this specifically, there's an awful lot of information about your entry-level processes on how to do a successful cast. But that's pretty much where it is, because you've got your standard generic ring or whatever the case is, and there's a lot of variables within that. As you understand that, that's fine. But as soon as you start branching past that, you start running into a whole host of other issues. You've got fluid dynamics, thermal dynamics, thermal gradients. It goes on. Even the quality of the water that you're using has implications. It's a massive ripple effect. The biggest struggle, and also in a lot of businesses, you're looking at challenges within a business. The natural reaction is, let's just change a whole bunch of things. But it's about calming down, looking at it. It's like, right, if finding one thing and tweak this. Is this handle going to work? And then you watch. Did that work? No. Okay, let's reset that. Let's go to the next one. Let's turn this handle. And fumbling one's way forward without the loss of enthusiasm, as Winston Churchill said, is basically the way of doing it. So, so it's literally just drawing on years of experience of doing this stuff. The beauty with working with precious metals is that you have to learn. It keeps you humble. There's always something you don't know. And again, same with business. There's always something you don't know. And as soon as you got someone if you really look at the top key people, there's there's a whole bunch of them that'll have a really big ego, but it keeps you humble. There's always something you don't know. And sometimes things will go wrong. It's like, well, why did that happen? What did I miss? Why did the metal behave like that? And then you've got to go back and research it. Every single metal type has its own characteristics. They all behave differently. They've got their own personalities.
Wow.
And it's just tweaking it and getting to know them. It's basically like you make friends with it. And some days, like everyone, some days the metal has a good day, sometimes it has a bad day. I know it sounds quite cliche, quite ridiculous, in fact. But they all have their own little personalities. And it's all about understanding what each one likes, what they don't like, and getting that feel for them.
Wow. Metal with their own personality. I'm making notes as we go here, Chris, because the Japanese have a term kaizen, continuous and never-ending improvement. And that ties in beautifully with what you say. There's always something you don't know, and you need to have that kaizen mindset of, I can always get better, I can always get better, I can always get better. I want to go to...
Here's the one last thing on that, leave it before I let you jump to the topic.
Sure.
Actually, it was a conversation I had with my dad many years ago. And he was saying, look, have you learned what to do in the first week of doing that job and then repeated it for 20 years? Or did you learn for 20 years every day? Was there something that you've picked up? And I think making that distinction is very, very important.
Yes.
And pushing through with that in any endeavor, I think it's vitally important. Recognizing that our own ignorance, and there's always something that we don't know, and being open to learning, I think, is vital.
Yes, well, you actually want the whole team with that mindset. I did a podcast with a guy called Kieran Barr, who worked with Jack Welch in General Electric. And again, we took the whole podcast. You listened to it, did you?
I did. It was great.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, like I was just so, fantastic to get that close to, Jack Welch and the whole concept of shaping the culture, like, what is that, 600,000 employees or something?
That's incredible number.
Some outrageous number. But of course, therefore, leadership all being on the same page. But part of that leadership is that learning mindset, the Kaizen mindset, that, guys, there's no way we continue to grow a double digit without a learning mindset. And your dad's 100% right there as far as the same thing, mate. Look at this. Boy, oh boy, solitude. These are themes you talked about. Motherhood. Adagio. Phobia. Wow, this is amazing. Talk me through this gallery. My goodness, just incredible.
Well, on phobia there, so the intent is to recognize our emotions. So that is actually a cast of this finger. Maybe I should use a different finger, but it was my index finger on my right hand. So I made a mold of it, and I then cast that into gold, and I incorporated the spider onto the finger with the intent that the viewer would be drawn in because of the allure and the luster of gold. I identify that there's a spider on the finger and get that arachnophobic response. Now, if you look at the wooden base, which is a purple heart, on the back of the finger. So if you imagine the finger is an axis, a central point, there's a subtle curve to the left behind the finger. And that's symbolic of our baseline emotional state. And then when you're engaging with a phobia, we have this very irrational explosion of response, which is now arcing off the complete opposite direction and extending very far out. It's a far-reaching emotion, right? And that's what I'm symbolizing within that piece. And recognize that adults are nothing more than emotionally damaged children. And it's how we end up honing in and pulling back our emotional responses, because events are pretty inert for what they are. It's just we put our own emotion onto it. Yeah, so for example, if someone cuts you off in the traffic, sure, there's any number of things you could say to them, but there's that space. Viktor Frankl actually said it, between stimulus and response there's a gap. As within that gap, we get to choose our response. And I think that can be applied to so many points in life.
Absolutely.
And that's really what phobia is about.
Wow. Mate, and adagio, where did you get that word from? I've never heard of it before, adagio.
I'm not too sure where I came across it actually. A few years
Is it
back.
French?
It's
Is
just-
it Greek? What
No,
where does
it's
it come
English. It means it's an old English word. It means a slow time. I believe is it English? I stand under correction on that. Don't hold me to that one. But I know it's the meaning is slow time.
I'll dig it up. It's fantastic. And motherhood of here. What are these things on there? The gold.
The gold
what is it?
elements, yeah. So those are it's all everything that I've got on everything here is all 18 karat gold. All of it's solid gold. It's not plated. It's not dipped. It's all solid.
Mhm.
The motherhood, the wood itself is a type of acacia. It's called snake wood by the Aboriginal people. It's from up north and towards Monkey Mia way.
Mhm.
Now the two elements hanging on the sides, those are symbolic of our natural traits and abilities that we have, our natural gifts. We all tend to have a lopsided set of skill sets that we have on of our suite of skills. So that's what that symbolizes. Actually, in the back support, which I don't think you can see from the photo, is actually a stylized uterus, a bit of a homage to the mother.
Oh wow.
And the spider on top, that's symbolic of our mortality in life, right? So, and that is, I've got a sweeping gold frame around it, just symbolizing just embrace and just nurture. All of the wood, all the gold elements are riveted into place with 18 karat gold rivets, but the rivets are then all terminated with diamonds, and that's on every piece that has rivets. They're all terminated with diamonds, except the front rivet on motherhood is terminated with a ruby, symbolic of the life and the blood from the mother. But also why I've put it on the furthest points on that sculpture is because, especially came from South Africa, the maternity leave there is we might as well say there isn't any maternity leave. It's the ignorance that society has that I think mothers go through when having a child, and it's just recognizing that it's society, because we have. I think the best way to experience or understand something is to actually experience it, and because most of us are unable to have that experience, we think, okay, well, just toughen up, just get over it, move on, and it's just recognizing that disassociation to appreciating the challenges and the hardships that mothers go through.
Wow, mate, the depth of the story is just incredible, and obviously this one here, homage to mental health, which. By the way, we run a men's mental health group called Blokes Talk Beachside, and next week, starting around June 10th, is the men's health and men's mental health in particular. And obviously we say it's top of mind right here in West Australia at the moment with the news last night of one guy doing a murder-suicide and another being buried, a footballer gone at age 29, and he was one of 4 in the last 4 or 5 years from that one football club. Oof. So mental health is literally top of mind. And as you say, this feeling of loneliness and feeling literally what we find in our Blokes Talk Beachside is when guys start to share their story, they realize, oh my God, I'm not the only one going through this. But we know that something like 40% of men have never discussed anything about how they feel or what's going on inside in their inner world. And so often it's that feeling of, I'm the only one going through this. No one else has ever gone through this before. So tell me about solitude and your piece, Solitude.
So Solitude is I had a very, very good mate, Mark, who decided to end it. And this is a homage to him. So what I've got going on here, and I'll briefly speak on Mark in a second, but this is symbolic of our uphill struggle and the stresses that we're all going through on a day-to-day basis. Now, the location of the spider is, there's a small knot in the wood. I don't know if you can really see it very clearly from that image, from that perspective, but it's almost like a little safe space for self-care, looking after one's mental health, looking as if the spider might be able to climb into that space. And the gold footing on the base is symbolic of the fact that we are more loved than we'd ever actually know. And that is that support there but we're just so often completely ignorant of it, and we don't see a way out. Where if we were just to start speaking about it and just having those conversations, I think it could completely change the direction of one's life. And I met Mark when we first came to Australia. He was immigrated out several years prior to us arriving, and we arrived in I believe it was the 26th of August of that particular year, and we're coming up to Christmas, and I met Mark on the golf course. Got invited to a sort of boys outing with someone that I knew here. Met him, and he's like, "What are you guys doing for Christmas?" I go, "Nothing. We've got no family here." So he invited us to come and spend Christmas with him and his family. It's just a complete stranger. Just met on the golf course, and such a touching moment. Just so grateful to have had that invitation and built that friendship. And yeah, I had no idea that he was in such a dark space. And it's just just speak out about it. And I used to be in a very dark space myself until my robbery. I'm actually so grateful that robbery happened, because it was such a big wake up call. Wow. For me, and it was such a, it's just something that needs to be spoken more about.
Well, that's exactly what we do in our Blokes Talk Beachside. In fact, we're literally running another event on June 10th at Cottesloe Surf Club. We run these events in the surf clubs. That's what we call it, Blokes Talk Beachside, and we get men in the room because we realise that often, it's hard to believe the blokes don't necessarily talk about their mental health, let alone with other blokes, but certainly when women are around. So it changes the dynamic, and we've been getting fantastic results with it. But as you say, often we don't know the person, the experience. I mean, this Cam McCarthy guy, they talk about it in the paper. He was the light in the room. When he walked into a room, he was clearly on the outside there was light, but on the inside there was dark. And so I come across one of Carl Jung's quotes last night, talking about, being willing to look at the darkness inside, to face some of those disempowering, we say bullshit thoughts that are actually you're holding to be reality. And as you say, in memory of Mark. Beautiful, mate. Let's go to a couple of things. This is fantastic. I mean, people are going to want to go to your website, I'm sure, and take a look at all this. But clearly, you're a reader. You've done reading. You've talked about Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Give me some of the books that you're reading now. What are you reading at the moment or listening to in terms of podcasts? If we're talking about leading your best life and inner world and knowledge and continually improving, what are you reading at the moment or listening to at the moment?
I am currently reading or listening to. I do a lot of podcasts. I'm dyslexic, so it's easy for me to rather listen as opposed to read. I'm a very slow reader, and a lot of what I do at the office is habitual. So I'm able to absorb a lot of information during my workday. And when I come to something that really requires high focus, I've put the audiobook off and I focus. And before I get to what I'm about to jump into, is I truly believe we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most amount of time with. So whether you choose to consume social media or whatever the case is, or you end up reading books, or you're socializing, what podcasts you're listening to, those ultimately become the 5 people. All right, we're the average of that. So I try and have a very diverse range of content, although I have my specific things I really enjoy. At the minute, the Creative Acts by Rick Rubin is what I'm listening to at the minute.
Yes,
really,
Rubin's
really
fantastic,
good.
isn't he? Yeah.
And I've listened to a lot of talks by Tony Robbins, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Lee Kuan Yew, a lot of content from those guys, a couple of the books, Viktor Frankl, Ludwig von Mises, who is the economist. He's got some really interesting ideas out there about the economic theories. And he passed away many years ago, but some of these are just like fundamental classics. I actually wrote some of these books down because I knew we were going to have this little point. Atomic Habits by James Altucher. Oversubscribed. Daniel Priestley, he's got an awful lot of content out there. Really, really interesting guy. Guns, Germs, and Steel is really interesting. Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins. Principles by Ray Dalio. Winning. Tim Grover's got some incredible books. Tim Grover, that set of books that he wrote. So he was a coach for Chicago Bulls player. My goodness, I'm just gone blank on him.
Michael Jordan. Jordan, yeah.
Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And really, like, it was like, yeah, great, he was an excellent player. But when you actually listen to or read the amount of discipline that these guys had, Jordan had, it's unbelievable. And you think like, oh, I'm having a hard time. Like, you know what a hard time is. You listen to these guys, what these guys actually went through to push the envelope to become just that little bit better, just that little bit better. Identify one thing. There might be 50 things that are falling apart. Pick one of them and just tweak it. There's actually a really interesting. Actually, I think James Altucher talks on this example in Atomic Habits, where the UK hadn't won the Tour de France for like 50 years or something like this, ridiculous time frame. And they got in a new coach, and the coach said, right, we just looked at everything. Said, right, well, let's talk about sleeping. How's the team sleeping? Let's find the best pillows. What's the best temperature to sleep at? Okay, once they kind of get that done, it's like, how do we wash our hands? Personal hygiene. Do you wash your hands? What technique are you using to reduce getting sick? So they got a health specialist interested in how to wash their hands. Great. Then it came to their vans for moving their bikes around. They painted the entire interior of the van white so that you could see any speck of dust quite clearly if there's anything there, because the risk is that tiny little speck of dust might drift off from the side and get caught in the cog and take off 0.0003 of a second, and that could literally mean the difference between first and second place, right? And he went so granular, but just changed one thing at a time, and then change one thing at a time. And it's once it all compounds, you've now got a winning team. And it was such a great example of the importance of paying attention to the details. It's all in the details. That's where everything is. Providing a great quality product, a great quality service, and everything will then grow out from there. It's
a great example of the Kaizen mindset of continuous and never-ending improvement there, mate. So I can see you've immersed yourself in those books. You've just gone through a whole range of books, as you say, from Charlie Munger to Ray Dalio to Rick Rubin to Tony Robbins. And you mainly listen to those, did you say? You read them, mainly listen
Audible, and I just listen to those. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And this is literally just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many other books I'd love to actually credit, but I don't want to take up your time.
Mate, it's fantastic.
But it's just absorbing these sorts of ideas and this way of thinking. It's really served me.
Well, we say leaders are readers. Leaders are readers, and and if you want to Kaizen, your point there, which is Charlie Tremendous Jones was a speaker from 20 or 30 years ago, and he literally would say, you'll be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for two things: the people you meet and the books you read. And so, 100%. As you say, and these days, the people you can go on YouTube, you can listen to Audible. There's so many ways. I mean, let's say 50 years ago, how the hell could you get inside Warren Buffett's head, or how the hell could you get inside Ray Dalio, or Tony Robbins, or any of these others? But now you can be sitting with Tony Robbins or Warren Buffett. In fact, in the old days, the only way you could sit and listen to Warren Buffett was to be a shareholder of Berkshire Hathaway. And once a year, he would be at the shareholders meeting and he would read his letter and people would be in his presence. And I've got to say, there's a guy I went to university with who I bumped into at the airport in Perth. Now that would have been 25 or more years ago. No, I'm literally racing off to go to America. I'm going to the Berkshire Hathaway annual general meeting. And this guy was literally a devotee of Warren Buffett. And a mate of mine is literally over on the Mediterranean on this guy's boat at the moment. The guy is worth about $400 million because again, people you meet, the books you read, who do you hang out with, who do you study, who's your mentor? It's almost like, show me your mentor and I'll show you your life, just on that, besides the books and the audiobooks, in terms of your life, you've mentioned a conversation with your father, because often we talk about crucial conversations with people that change the direction of your life or change your thinking. And your father may be one of them, but if you can recall one or two conversations with mentors or coaches or teachers that made an impact on you, that stuck with you, can you think of any of those?
Yeah, so mate, there's been a lot. I've always made a point of finding people who are better than I am and doing what they tell me to do. ask them the questions. I think first and foremost, unless you're trying to put someone on Mars at the minute, pretty much everything else has already been done, right? Even it might even be a small niche, might be on the fringes, and that's where the opportunities lie, on the fringes. But find someone that's already done it and ask them, what must I do to achieve this? And then do what they tell you to do. That's first and foremost. To getting back to your question, my dad was very, very influential. He's more shoot from the hip entrepreneurial style guy. He was very, very blessed to have such a great wealth of knowledge from my dad. My uncle, he was also very entrepreneurial, but more on the corporate side. So that was very, very interesting to see and learn from him, because the mindset between just sitting back and observing the differences between my dad and my uncle, they are both very good at what they do, but the mindset are completely different. Obviously, it's true, there's some overlap, of course, but how those two organizations would function it's interesting to see that transition and recognizing what time to tap out and say, okay, cool, I'm no longer providing the highest quality service I can. I need to hand this over to someone else, whatever realm that might be in. Then another mentor, Dimitri, he was Master Goldsmith, and I had the privilege of working with him for many years. When you saw earlier all those different crucibles, each metal alloy has its own recipe, and you're looking for specific properties that you want that metal to have. So good level of hardness, good natural luster, or X, Y, Z variables. Those recipes were handed down to me almost like a grandmother having a secret recipe for your favorite cookies. And then that doesn't get distributed until a point where it's like, okay, cool, here's the recipe. So those recipes were handed to me through Dimitri, and as given to him by his journeyman. So it's actually several generations that this recipe has gone through. So
beautiful.
I learned an incredible amount of information from him. Actually, one of my cousins, actually son of my uncle, who's in the corporate space. He was, the one thing he always said was persistence overcomes resistance, and that was also a very big sticking point. One of the lads, actually, I mentioned this guy, my old school friend Jono. We parted ways in primary school. We reconnected many years afterwards, and he was then living in the most exquisite little town in France called Chamonix, on the French side of the Swiss Alps. And he was into rock climbing, and we went to go and spend some time with him. My wife and I were backpacking. He was in a house share. Set the scene a little bit here. He's in a house share setup. There are 7 people living in this house. And John is like, look, you're welcome to stay with us, but we have like 0 room. So like, we'll figure something out. Literally the only available space was my wife and I sleeping with our heads in his closet and our feet sticking out of the closet, right? So it was very tight. So we stayed there for a week with him, and we went rock climbing. And there's a particular spot that he loved to go up. And I was on this rope, and I was probably about 30 meters up this rock face. And there was this, the next handhold I had to get was I had to jump for it. And I was concerned, like, look, if I miss this, I'm going to get roasties. It's not going to be pretty. I'm going to get hacked up by the side of this rock as I fall. Like, sure, there's a rope, because I'm on a rope. So I'm probably going to drop maybe 5-6 meters, but it's not going to be pleasant.
So significant. No, yeah. If you can avoid it, you will. Yeah.
Sure. So I'm looking at this, and I'm and ahhing whether or not to take this leap. And excuse me for swearing, but John said, Chris, just fucking commit.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that was the point, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I get some roasties. And that has stuck in my mind. So many points in my life. Just fucking commit. And, in life, like, we're all going to run out of time. We're all going to kick the bucket at some point.
Yeah.
What have you done with it? Just commit. Just do the thing. As long as you feel it's here, you've got that energy, that vibrance, like, that ignites your soul. That's what you should be doing with your time. That's what you need to focus on. It's just commit. If it doesn't work.
Thank you, Jono. So did you make it?
I did.
Oh, good. Thank you, Jono. There's a guy called Jono Palmer, who's a South African here. He swims with it, but I don't think he's a rock climber. It's obviously a different Jono.
Yeah, different Jono.
No, fantastic. Chris, I'm conscious of time. We've gone over the hour, but I want to do a couple of other questions.
Sure.
Firstly, what does the future hold for Chris and his wife? What does the future hold for Chris Winspear and his wife,
It's
Vinny and Charles?
leaning into what we're doing, mate. Leaning into what
Yeah,
we're doing,
leaning
and
in.
just again to quote Churchill, is fumble forward without the loss of enthusiasm. Adapt, adjust, find out what works, find out what doesn't work, try and identify what doesn't work, and then tweak it and
Right.
move forward. That's really
Fumble
what we can do.
forward without the loss, fumble and stumble forward without the loss of enthusiasm. Beautiful. Mate, is there anything I haven't asked you'd like me to cover before we wrap up?
Mate, yeah, again, I want to be conscious of your time here. So, but I think you've covered quite a broad spectrum there, and I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to be on here. But actually, I really would like to mention, Brooke Ann's from Burley Gallery, which is in Midland, where one of my sculptures are on display. And again, just hat off to Brooke Ann. She's been an incredible mentor within the realm of the art space, because there is jewelry and art has been they're both, there's a perception that they're both arts, which they are, but they're still quite different. So she's been a great source of information.
Well, let me first of all, we'll go back to your web page so people can go to your website, chriswinspear.com. What is Brooke Ann's? Is there a website there that we should let people know about?
Yeah.
Burley Gallery and Press. There it is.
That's it.
Okay, so people want to, so that's they can get access to you via Burley Gallery and Press out there in Helena Street in Midland.
That's it. Otherwise, obviously, all the socials. I'm on LinkedIn as Chris Winspear, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and the websites, obviously. Actually, one other thing I will quickly mention here is my daughter's 5.5, and every day that she's been alive, I've always had this thing where, how can I try and be the sort of person that would, what can I teach her? And it's actually been quite a converse to that, where I've actually been the one that's learned, and I've done this thing called daily dad advice for my daughter. So although the numbers, I've never not given her the advice, but I started doing videos. One day, today's going to be 1,871. So every day I've given her a little bit of advice, and I've also uploaded that to Instagram and TikTok. There's accounts there to her.
Okay, what have you called it? So if I'm on Instagram,
if you go Chris Winspear, so what you're seeing there, that's Chris Winspear Official, which is the precious metal art.
Yep.
And then Chris Winspear is the Instagram handle for the dad advice videos.
Okay, let's have a look at this.
It's sort of
that's a different Chris Winspear there, is it? Look, he's the
that's not me. Yeah,
Chris Winspear here, right there it is.
Yep, that's it. So it's every day, whether it's been a quote or it's been something that you struggled with for the day, or something that I learned that day, be a podcast, whatever, wherever the source of that information came from. I'll find something. I'm trying to add a little bit of value to, first and foremost, for my daughter, but I hope to obviously help other people. And I've had some incredible responses from complete strangers all over the world saying, more so on the back end, saying, thank you so much. This has been incredible. I really learned a lot. And it's great. Yeah. Been truly
so moving, mate. So moving. I like it when you're feeling depressed and shit. When you are feeling depressed and shit is not just shit's not going right. Know that everything comes to an end, even the shit times. But you reminded me again of Churchill saying, when you're going through hell, keep walking.
Keep walking. That's it.
Don't stop.
Yeah.
Chris, it's been absolutely fantastic, mate. I mean, I've taken a ton of notes here on my Leaf Arnold pad, everything from, and in no particular order, the emphasis on quality, as you say, making life more meaningful, the people factor, turning dead spiders into gold, into art, just amazing. The word adagio, and then, we've talked about motherhood and, of course, solitude and depression, mental health, reassessing what's important in life, first principles, the holistic, the narrative, the fact that you've developed such beautiful and artistic not only artistic, super articulate with the narrative, and building the story around your pieces is just beautiful. And then just fucking commit. I like that. And as you say, and our friend Viktor Frankl, the gap, the gap between stimulus and response, the fact that we as humans can choose, and then that little nook in the wood of the spider in I think it's solitude, self-care, the space of self-care, mate. Just so beautiful, Chris, mate. Let's stay in touch, because
Please do.
people, please do get in touch with Chris. This is just beautiful. But thank you so much, Chris. You've been certainly inspiring for me, helping me and others, insights into making decisions to lead your best life. Mate, we'll stay in touch. Thank you very much for your
Bless you.
time.
Thanks, Lee. And keep doing what you're doing. There's the people that you've interviewed are blown away, and I'm truly humbled to be a part of that list. It's really it's really something that you've created. Bless you, mate. Keep going.
Thank you, mate. See you soon.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.